So what is the hardest Tetris game then? I'll tell you all about it next time. After being stuck on the Okay, an explanation might be in order. Sup, my name is Superclass and I am not a content creator, but I do publish videos here every once in a while. It's mostly a grab bag of whatever I feel like making at any given time, but it does tend to circle around essays on niche video games. After publishing a video on the Pico 8 in June 2022, my thoughts turned back to Tetris, which was the topic of my most popular video at the time. While that video was about modern Tetris, I wanted to do a deep dive into Tetris the Grandmaster specifically, which is a sub-series that I really love. My main goal with this new video was to challenge myself to make something better and right the wrongs of my past projects. This meant two main objectives. The first one was successfully making a long video. My very first video was about covering little under 150 Flash games from a developer named Nitrome. I felt very nostalgic about them, and my goal was to try and find a thread connecting them to tell a story. But the project grew too big and my interest too thin. I didn't feel like there was really a story to tell after all. It was just me meandering for hours on end, so I pulled the plug 2 parts in. The second objective was to improve the quality of my research. That first Tetris video attracted a lot of attention, which meant a lot of praise and criticism, some of which was very much valid. I actually have some very strong feelings about that video's reception, but I never felt like there was a good time to address it. Until now. The main issue here is that the title is really not good. Tetris's rotation system is broken. My intent was to speak about it being quirky and weird, and I like in life to affectionately use the word broken under that definition, not realizing that on top of just not being a correct use of the term, it's also very loaded, and some people thought it was a cringy attempt at getting more views or doing clickbait. I promise that was not my goal, and if I could go back, which I can't because the title card in the video itself wouldn't match, I'd call the video something more like Tetris's rotation system is strange, or Tetris's rotation system is weird, and that would have communicated my intentions correctly with zero confusion. And yes, one might say stop putting title cards in your video then, but title cards are cool, so I'm just going to keep doing it and try really hard not to mess up my titles. Anyway, overall, I had reached the conclusion that my research was not tight enough. I had to be better. For the following video, no, not the JoJo meme, the next following video, I carefully fact-checked my claims and made sure my sources were as reliable as possible. And for this new Tetris video, I wanted my research to be airtight. What this all means in practice is that my new video would be very ambitious. The length of my first videos combined with the level of animation of the second and third one and an unprecedented level of research and precision. Around July 2022, I began writing my first draft, which totaled about 45 pages. In December of that year, I was done. In the interest of keeping my research top-notch, I reached out to some members of the Grandmaster community to look over my script and point out any glaring mistakes or omissions to ensure previous incidents did not reoccur. After a couple of months of back and forth and corrections, the script was in a good enough place to be turned into a video. I created a short to tease the project to my viewers and got to work recording the voiceover over the course of a few days. Little did I know that short would be the last piece of content I would publish for the following 3 years. In early 2023, I created a new project in Premiere Pro and started sourcing footage, and then I got to work making a rough cut. A few months after that, I started making the animations. Then more and more. And as you can probably guess, this is where things started going sideways. Making new animations felt like chipping at a mountain with a butter knife. I kept thinking that I just needed to do a little more, that I was 70% of the way there. And yet, the goalpost grew a mind of its own and took 2 steps away from me every time I made one. Compounding all of this, my personal life started getting in the way of making progress. I went on a month-long trip overseas where I decided not to bring my laptop with me, bringing progress to a complete halt. Then I started university and the workload was simply incompatible with that plus a part-time job. In the little pockets of free time I had, I often didn't feel like working on the video because it just felt like more work when I wanted to kick back and relax and play games and stuff. The only time I could reliably make progress was in between semesters. Otherwise, the project would be in complete standby for months at a time. This is when I knew it would take a while to complete, much longer than anything I'd done before. In September 2023, I wrote a community post letting my subscribers know about this situation and citing quote-unquote unforeseen life circumstances. What I just talked about, those were the circumstances I was referring to. And this is the rhythm I settled into for the next 2 years, slowly chipping at this immense project here and there, putting more work during breaks and dialing back during semesters. By 2024, I didn't feel good about the video anymore. My motivation was starting to wane, as it tends to for most people during long projects, and I was getting sick and tired of working on the same thing for so long. The project was officially no longer fun to work on. And this prolonged timeline weighed on me in more than one way. I have never been prolific with my content. I don't think this will come as a shock to anyone. Not counting channel updates and the JoJo SpongeBob meme thing, my fastest turnaround ever was between my first and second video, and that was 5 months. With that in mind, even by my standards, even considering the very ambitious scope of this new project, 2 years was an abnormal amount of time between videos. Enough time had passed that I could no longer reasonably call this drought a long production process. It was a hiatus. The channel was just not active. All I could do was put my head down, try not to compare myself to channels establishing themselves and far surpassing my throughput in a fraction of the time, and keep working on the video, 1 frame at a time. I also stopped posting updates because I'm just not really fond of posting updates over and over again when there's no real progress being made. At some point, I would rather just quietly retreat into my corner and do the actual work and come back when the work is finished. In mid-2024, I took a cold hard look at the project and concluded that it would never get finished, actually, unless I made some drastic cuts. Just looking at the timeline by that point was enough to make me feel completely demoralized because there was just so much work left. So the way I saw it, I had 2 choices. Either I could start cutting content or I could cancel the project altogether. I've already done the latter before with Nitrome, so I was no stranger to canceling projects, but this felt different from the Nitrome videos. Back then, I no longer believed in those videos because I didn't feel like I was making something worth publishing or something that I would be proud of. Not here. There was a lot of content I wanted to put out into the world that I had put into the video, and I legitimately thought it was great. Plus, I didn't want to let all of the work my collaborators put into the project go to waste. I wanted to do right by them. So I went with option 1. Almost an hour of content from this video, which itself was planned to be almost 2.5 hours long in total, was dedicated to Tetris the Grandmaster 4, which at the time had been in development hell for close to 10 years. I really liked that part of the video because, unlike the gameplay overviews I had done for the previous games in the series, this chapter was more of an investigation into how the game kept surfacing in and out of the public eye. So that was a lot of very interesting stuff to cover. But this sudden change in editing style was exactly why that part needed to go, because it stuck out like a sore thumb and it made the video way too long to watch and way too long to make. So I removed it. I made 2 copies of the project. I named one of them with TGM4 and the other one without TGM4. Let me tell you, seeing 50 minutes of animation work disappear instantly was an immense relief, and I felt like the project was actually completable once more. And I really needed some motivation because by late 2024, my motivation was reaching critically low levels. As 2025 rolled on, I accepted that I no longer had the energy to see this project through as planned, even in its shortened form without the 50-minute segment for Tetris the Grandmaster 4. I really just wanted the project to be over because I'd been working on it for almost 3 years by that point. So I continued making cuts in places where I'd never imagined you could make cuts. So any sequence that wasn't absolutely necessary to convey my core message was cut. Any outdated meme or reference, because the video was that old by that point, that was cut. Any sequence that was originally meant to be a 3D animation was cut, animated in 2D instead, or just replaced by stock footage. And then I also had to keep in mind that some of the information I had gathered in 2022 was no longer up to date in 2025. If that piece of information wasn't critical, I would just cut it out. So I didn't have to put in the work to actually do more research and replace that piece of information by the more up-to-date information. But some of it could not be ignored. And what I'm getting to here was Tetris the Grandmaster 4, after being in development hell for over 15 years, actually released before I had completed the video. It released in April 2025. So that is not something you can ignore. I had to mention TGM4 in some capacity, but also I didn't have the energy to actually cover it thoroughly the same way I did for all of the other games in the video. And so I just said it. I just said it in the video. And now, with all that said, we were in September 2025 by that point, and there was actually, seriously, legitimately very little work left to do. The video, by my estimation, was 95% complete, and it just needed a little bit more polish. I just needed to update some old data. The finish line was finally in sight, but my body just could not move. I couldn't do it. After dragging myself through the mud to keep the project alive for literally 3 years, my tank was completely empty. And I couldn't bear to even just look at the project anymore. I was creatively exhausted. For 3 years, every minute of my free time was a minute I could potentially spend working on the project. It was a minute I should have spent working on the project. So it was always in my mind, even when I wasn't actively working on it. And I was at a crossroads again. I had to make a decision. Either I keep crawling toward that finish line and take like another year working at a snail's pace, or just cut my losses and publish the video as is with a disclaimer so people can have 95% of a complete video as opposed to 0% of a video or 100% of a video in another 2 years or something insane like this. You can probably guess which option I chose. So over a weekend, I tied up all of the loose ends in the edit just to make it actually watchable, and I exported a complete version of the video for the first time. After going through 2 major cutting sprees and a hardware upgrade and an OS downgrade, the Premiere Pro project couldn't even be closed without crashing. And I know a lot of people are always like, Premiere Pro crashes so much, especially on Windows, because I make my stuff on a Windows machine. But my version of Premiere has always been pretty stable. I had a video you could watch from start to finish. It just had a few blemishes, but the vast majority of the work was done. And all I had to do was just hit publish, and I would be done. And that felt very weird, because I had imagined and dreamed and fantasized about the day I'd finally be able to hit publish so many times that actually getting to do it felt really terrifying. Because what if people didn't understand my circumstances? What if no one cared after all this time? What if my collaborators were upset that I took so long, that the project wasn't what was originally planned? But my deepest fear lying at the center of this hurricane of last-minute anxiety was related to my past experience. Are these 3 years of work going to be reduced to a single emission again? Is the research I put into this video enough? Am I enough? Because I told you I had strong feelings about that Tetris video, and I think a lot of people experience this on this platform when you make videos that require some research about things that are a little bit more technical. But people like to make corrections a lot, and I was affected quite a bit by some of the omissions I had made in that first Tetris video, as I said, especially concerning omitting the mini T-spin double. And the most upvoted comment in that video was about that omission. And it felt really terrible. It felt like it had kind of overshadowed the entire video, and all of the people who enjoyed it, and the I think 98%, 98.5% like to dislike ratio, all of a sudden that didn't really matter anymore. I know it's a me problem, but there's no way I'm the only person who feels like this sometimes. It is human to have fear and doubt sometimes, even though I know for a fact the project is on the whole good, and it can both have mistakes and also be a good project that people like at the same time. Those are not mutually exclusive. And I really feared something like this would happen again with this new Tetris the Grandmaster video. But just before pressing publish on that one, it hit me that during the 3 years I spent working on the video, I didn't just do that. I lived my life. A lot of significant things happened in my personal life during that time, and I was no longer the same person I was when I published my Pico 8 video 3 years before. So unlike that time, I steeled myself and decided that if the video had omissions or mistakes, then it was simply the extent of what it could be, and that was that. People's reactions are out of my hands, and as far as I was concerned, I was proud of what I had made. There was still a significant amount of work and blood and sweat and tears that had gone into the project and resulted in some sequences I wanted people to see. So I pressed publish. I treated myself to a massive celebration meal, and I removed the shortcut to the project files that had been sitting menacingly in the corner of my desktop for 3 years. Ladies and gents, my free time was officially mine again, for real. Now, how was the video actually received? Well, most of my fears turned out to be just that, fears. What really happened was longtime subscribers were happy to see me publishing again, my collaborators were happy to see the project being complete, and I don't think the video is going to break any personal bests in the long term. I knew it was extremely niche from the start, but it still became the fastest growing release in the history of my channel by a factor of 4. And currently it has a 98% like to dislike ratio and many positive comments, very strong engagement. So by all metrics, that video was a success. And there you have it. This is why I spent 3 years working on a video, because it was tremendously large and I had little time to work on it and I ran out of motivation. And after hearing all of this, you might be asking yourself, why is there so much time left on this video then? Clearly you have something else to say. And I do, because even though this was a fairly comprehensive and honestly very vulnerable recounting of this video's production, there's no lesson, there's no silver lining, there's no moral, and I could easily say some bullshit platitude along the lines of, I didn't fail 10,000 times, I learned how not to make a light bulb 10,000 times, but I'm not here to tell you things you already know that ultimately don't mean jack shit in practice. I'm here to tell you what actually happened and how I actually feel about it. So my real takeaway from this entire experience is, I don't want to be a YouTuber anymore. And if you have a channel, honestly, you should consider not being one either. Okay, an explanation might be in order. When I said I didn't want to be a YouTuber anymore, your first thought was probably that I was going to abandon this channel for good this time, that I was encouraging others to do the same, to give up on YouTube, to be quitters. And that assumption would be wrong. I said I no longer wanted to be a YouTuber. I didn't say I didn't want to make content anymore. But I want you to question why your mind just jumped to that initial conclusion in the first place. And I believe that this is simply due to how people tend to perceive content creation today. The terms influencer, content creator, and YouTuber are actually pretty damn loaded and carry a lot of implications when you take a closer look. I first came at odds with that when I started telling people around me I was starting a channel shortly before the pandemic, so 5-ish years ago. And outside of general curiosity around what my videos were about, I quickly started noticing a recurring theme: unsolicited advice. Did you know there are classes that teach you how to do that stuff? How are you going to capitalize on that video's success? Have you considered opening a Patreon? Can't you just make videos faster? Don't worry, once you hit your stride, things will pick up. How many followers, sick, do you have? Are you sure you want to make videos about Flash games? That's not a trending topic. If I can offer a tip, try not to make your videos too long. That's really bad for retention. What I can't say is that it's best to keep a consistent upload schedule. Every time I was told stuff like this, I felt bothered, almost offended, in a very visceral way. And obviously, unsolicited advice is a bad thing that I despise, because when you do it, you're both assuming someone needs help and that you are the authority who can give that help, even when it's not true. But it also made me realize that the majority of people I encountered had a certain idea of what someone making content on YouTube should aim to be. Something I am going to henceforth call the YouTuber, TM. The YouTuber starts a channel in hopes of having success one day, that is, reaching that mythical 1 million subscriber count. They seek out the best equipment to start out, and they try to take advice from bigger creators, or unfortunately self-appointed gurus, and they do their best to optimize their growth. That is, trying to please the algorithm, making videos that are just the right length, posting videos with the right timing, posting videos on a consistent schedule, posting videos about trending topics, posting videos in trending formats, fostering engagement, building a recognizable and iconic brand image through thumbnails, editing, and titles. Eventually, the YouTuber grows big enough to attract sponsorships from companies, including, but not limited to, Bad Mobile Game, Bad Earbuds, Shady VPN, Website Builder, Overpriced Mail Service, niche thing you've never heard of but actually kicks ass and really deserves your attention. Then, the YouTuber opens a Patreon for additional support, listing off all their most generous supporters at the end of every video. And maybe, just maybe, if the YouTuber plays their cards right, they hit that coveted number: 1 million subscribers. The YouTuber thanks their fanbase for the support, stating that they had never expected to reach that milestone, and either rides out into the sunset or disintegrates after a massive scandal that decimated their public image. The end. We all know that story. The YouTuber is the person who starts a channel and successfully turns it into a side hustle or even their main job. And that is a great thing. I'm not here to criticize that way of interacting with the platform, and especially if we're talking about someone who makes good content and they get to do what they love for a living and their viewers are happy. Why would I have anything bad to say about that? The world is already shitty enough to begin with. It's nice to have a little bit of good in the world. So more power to you if you manage to get there. No, my problem isn't that the YouTuber exists. It's that the YouTuber has come to consume every other way to interact with YouTube as a creator. YouTube can make money and can be a side hustle and can be a career, but that doesn't mean it has to be your objective. And right from the get-go, you're hounded with CTR and CPM and partner program and watch time and demographics and ratios and retention and algorithm. But who the fuck told you I wanted to play that game? Because You don't have to play that game. You can just use YouTube as a way to easily share videos with friends, or as a way to share a pre-recorded presentation, or as a way to nerd out on some insanely niche topics with stranger on the internet. I'd like to remind everyone that at its core, YouTube was a way to share ideas and content with the world in video form. The goal was to broadcast yourself, not to become a celebrity or build a business. And that's what I've come to hate so fucking much with all those people I've talked to over the years. They assume I want to be a YouTuber, TM, and foist all the pressure and bullshit that comes along with it on me, when all I want to do is just make fucking videos. Because I found it fun. It was a hobby that I did for fun, not for numbers, not for growth. I did it for fun. Because like most people, I'm already under enough stress in other areas of my life, just trying to survive while the world is on fire. So yes, YouTube can be very lucrative and make you famous. And if that's what you like, if that's what you want to try and aim for, do it. But it can also just be a hobby for fun, where you're not entitled to any kind of performance, because it's not a job. You're not treating it as a job. And since the start, I was adamant on treating YouTube as a hobby, to not try to become a YouTuber. And yet, I kept being very strongly affected by people pushing and prodding me in that direction. I kept feeling like I was failing and not doing things properly because, try as I might, I couldn't hit that implicitly accepted YouTuber pace of one video essay every 1 to 2 months. Gradually, I stopped telling people around me about my channel. Well, part of it was because there were just no updates to make in the first place, but also because sharing those updates and sharing that hobby made me feel very naked and judged every time. One of the perks of taking so long to make content is that I have plenty of time to simmer and cultivate my thoughts around it. In year 3 of making my TGM video, I tackled that visceral feeling I told you about earlier head on. That visceral feeling about being very bothered by what people said. And I asked myself exactly what was off. Why did it bother me so much? And that's when I came to understand that even though I claimed I had opted out of the YouTuber game, in truth, I was still trying to play it. I was just telling myself excuses for not winning. That's why I was so bothered by all the noise and bad advice. I still introduced myself literally as a YouTuber and as a content creator when I talked about what I did, but I didn't understand what those words actually entailed. And that's when I came to the conclusion that I didn't want to be a YouTuber anymore. Hopefully now you understand. That denomination simply doesn't match who I am, is the whole square peg round hole thing. As soon as I allowed myself to say that, unobstructed by excuses and fakeness and pretenses, a weight lifted off my shoulders. Because for the first time in 5 years, I was actually being me. And there's no way I'm the only one in that position, losing touch with what made content creation enjoyable due to how prevalent the "whoops, I slipped on a banana peel and I have 2 million subscribers now" narrative has become. Even though the vast majority of channels never even crack 100 subscribers. I've been at this for 5 years and I'm not even at 10K. But I'm okay with that because making that number go up has never been my objective. So, what now? What are my plans for the future if my objective isn't infinite growth? Good question. An explanation might be in order. I can't blame anyone for letting the assumption that I was a YouTuber run wild. I never put my foot down and made my intentions clear. But that changes today. Effective immediately, I am making some pretty massive changes to how I run this channel. I will no longer attempt to stick to any kind of schedule. Believe it or not, until this 3-year hiatus, I never took real breaks between videos. Even though from your perspective I did, for me there was always something cooking, even if it cooked very, very slowly. But not anymore. From now on, I will only work on a video if I feel like working on one. But if I post a video and I don't have any inspiration or time to make the next one, I'm not going to force myself to. That means the gap between videos could be anywhere from months to years, and that's by design at this time. However, what hasn't changed is that I still want to make content. And to help get my point across, I'll compare this new iteration of my channel to 4096. You likely came across at least one of their videos over the years. They make these incredible motion graphics that get millions of views, and then they disappear into the ether for a couple of months, sometimes years, and then they come out of nowhere with the next banger. We know basically nothing about this person. We don't have a name, we don't have a voice, we don't have a gender, we don't have anything. What's clear though is that 4096 is not a YouTuber. They're clearly someone living their life and dropping animations from time to time for fun. And I aim to be more like this. You might be tempted to compare my new approach to Lamino's, but that's not exactly right. Lamino is much closer to the definition of YouTuber than 4096 in that he has an upload schedule. It's very, very, very protracted, and it's only 1 to 2 videos per year, but it's still a schedule. Whereas, again, I don't want to have a schedule at all. All right. Well, I don't have a lot more to say, but it did feel very good to get this off my chest. I don't feel like making any kind of grandiose closing statement this time, so thank you for watching. See you in 3 years. By the way, did you notice that in the 5 years I've been doing this, I've never done the thing? You know, asking you to so and so. But then again, variety is the spice of life. Okay, here it goes. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to drop a like and subscribe.